me. Again, I'm the head of product strategy at TechnoMile, and I've been focused on how we can supercharge the work of contracts teams at aerospace and defense contractors. Since I joined TechnoMile a couple of years ago, I'm on the board of advisors of the National Contract Management Association, but I have a much broader view. I started my career, I'm a PhD economist. I have 2 decades of experience. I spent 10 years at RAND looking at manpower, defense cost, weapon systems. So I have a good understanding of what the defense industry is like. And I spent 10 years at Bloomberg, where I did analysis of how to make help companies win more business in the federal space, and aerospace and defense contractors, how companies can improve their top line and their bottom line. So I bring all these together to try to give broader insight. And I really want to help folks like you make better decisions about the technology you can use to support your businesses. So a little bit about TechnoMile. TechnoMile is about a 10-year-old company, and it punches far above its weight in this space. I'm talking to you from our Tysons Corner, Virginia headquarters. We have about 200 clients across all of our software solutions. We provide software as a service. And this includes to more than half of the top 10 federal defense contractors and 70% of the top IT contractors for the US federal government. So our software helps these contractors fill the funnel of opportunities, helps them win more business, identify opportunities at the front end. And once they've won those more contracts, helps them manage those contracts through the entire life cycle. So that's what we're trying to do, is provide a single pane of glass, a view of the information across the business, and it hooks into all sorts of other systems as well. Our software sits on top of the Salesforce and Microsoft platforms, and we have our own. But we found that almost all of our clients have a major platform that they want to rely on. And so we have gone where our clients go, exactly how our tools work. We want the information where they work. We want the workflows where they work. So who are our clients? Now, it's just a few of the largest that are here. You see aircraft and hardware and services providers. You see producers of ground vehicles, IT systems, electronic systems, companies with international headquarters and key US-based subsidiaries. The largest tribal and Alaska Native corporations in the space. These companies have extremely complex supply chains and challenging legal environments. And we say that, yes, we like to show off, but they have brought to us their key business challenges. And it's those business challenges that are embedded into our software, and what I really want to be able to show you today. Those lessons learned that my product team, our engineering team, have had to overcome are what I want to show you at the end, meeting the broader challenges that we see in this space. So from today's discussion, there are three key areas that I think three takeaway areas I want you to focus on. First, you're going to find out why contract lifecycle management has been harder to adopt in the aerospace and defense industry than in other sectors, even though there's so much potential, probably even more potential in this space. Second, you're going to see how CLM done right could enable a rapid digital transformation in a contracts organization in this space. And third, you're going to learn practical ways to assess CLMs. And you wouldn't be listening here. You wouldn't be listening to this webinar today if your organization or wasn't your responsibility to look at a better way to handle contracts and procurement. And so actually to prepare to talk to you all, I read up a lot on the digital transformation in this space, even in other areas. And I found that there is a huge ecosystem of an enormous array of providers, but they usually overpromise and underdeliver. My goal is to clear things up, make things as simple as possible, and so you can walk away feeling that you can make better decisions going forward. So let's start with those common barriers to contract lifecycle management amongst the aerospace and defense industry. And you might be surprised that there's actually pretty hard data on the challenges faced by people in this industry, people like you. World Commerce and Contracting and its Aerospace and Defense benchmark report a couple of years ago found that aerospace and defense is one-fifth less likely than other sectors to have contract management tools deployed or to have being deployed at that time. And explored the reasons why. And first is the belief that CLMs have a hard time handling the industry's complex forms and contracts and a demanding regulatory environment. Second is the belief that the sector's contracts are just simply too complex for automation. And the third is sort of inward looking. It's that the organizational structure, the customer structure, and the security environment is just too complex. And it's what you're seeing: complex, complex, complex. And you know what's all these beliefs have in common is they are grounded in the truth that it's hard to find a CLM solution that can handle the challenges of the aerospace and defense contractors and the industry overall. And it's because most CLMs are generic. They're not designed with those workflows. And they're designed to be faced by standard companies that don't have that level of complexity. Let me be specific about that. So standard CLM systems don't understand unique line item structures. They don't understand clauses and flow downs in the same way that you would expect. They don't understand a weighty responsibility of validating suppliers and or having really, really rigorous small business requirements. Or that in the government space, the major challenge in a contract system is actually reading the prime contract written by the government and writing a subcontract that is tremendously dependent on that prime contract, including flow downs and pricing and labor categories and all these other areas, that there is a workflow that's unique, a linkage that's unique in the contracting space. Also, who's in charge of contracts at these companies in aerospace and defense is often very different. It's often not a chief legal officer. It's a separate discipline, managed separately, requiring separate tools. In fact, World Commerce report indicates that, unlike other industries, the post-award side is the top responsibility and basically a time sink for far greater share of contracts organizations at aerospace and defense contractors. There's just an extremely large focus on post-award contract compliance in a way you do not have in a lot of other industries. Second, so how can a vertical CLM solution more effectively enable digital transformation of a contracts organization? And so let's dive into that pretty deeply. So there are 5 areas that why vertical is better, right? That's how you want to distill it into why vertical is better. 5 key areas. One, deep industry expertise. Now, at TechnoMile, we've been focused on this market. Basically, all of our time and energy goes to understanding the challenges faced by clients in this space. And so I would just put it this way: try this. Ask somebody who's an expert in a standard contract lifecycle management tool if something pretty unique that you would face day to day. If you're in the defense world, storing multiple DODACs per customer or cage codes for partners, managing SLIN funding against CLINs, task order contracts and how they roll up to IDIQs, how they track and handle data requirement deliverables and standard deliverables, how past performance data can be used for future proposals. If you're in the government space, how a contract with FAR 52212-5 can be ingested. For those who are doing mostly commercial aerospace and defense, that's a clause in the contract that basically is a series of checkboxes. And the clause is in your contract if it's checked, and it's not checked. We've found this out. Our system handles this. The contracts that come from the government have this, and we recognize that. And a software that's used for ingesting a contract should be able to handle that situation. Maybe something as simple as being able to create a standard contract brief. Being able to understand what it is that the information needs, the workflows, the data storage necessary, that's where the deep industry expertise is going to come into play. Second, why vertical specific? Because you're going to get it faster. Sure, okay, software. Anybody can build software, and standard CLMs can do these things, But the question is not about the ability to develop software, but to deliver it to you quickly. It can be made to do anything software, but our experience tells us that every company in this space has a pretty complex bespoke process. There might be some commonalities in between, and we leverage those commonalities. You want to find a solution with workflow tools that you can adopt out of the box or can be configured to meet your workflow tools, workflow processes. Large contractors will have built bespoke systems in the past. We've transitioned companies off of large bespoke systems that they've developed. Smaller contractors will have bootstrapped processes, but either way, it helps to have an underlying platform that you can go to that can be configured to meet your process. Instead of building something from scratch again, especially on the cloud, you're not going to be able to build something on the cloud from scratch the way you would maybe 15 years ago, 20 years ago, build something on-prem. That said, unless you're going to spend an enormous amount of time reorganizing your internal processes, we would suggest taking a very thoughtful, strategic approach and try to get value in the system as quickly as possible and go with a provider that can get you a huge area of value in one domain. You don't have to get everything all at once. You don't have to get all your procurement and your contract awards and all of your supply chain management all in a single system all at once. Think through how to get value in a quick manner and build out with capability by capability. All right. Third, what's going to happen for why vertical specific? It'll make you better. That's a productivity boost. Industry specific tasks definitely need to be automated. I'm going to show you in a bit organizational conflict of interest. I'll show you a limitation of funds. These are two specific tools that we have built that are workflows that are out of the box to help our teams, our clients' teams, manage their contracts a lot better and more simply. It should just make it easier. Fewer reminders of need to be sitting in the back of your head because they're in your inbox or in your notification bin telling you the next task that you need to accomplish, or they're sitting on a dashboard when you load up your system. A lot of these workflows don't have an analog in the commercial, and the tools are not there. Fourth, value for vertical specific, compliance. You should be focused on compliance from two separate angles. The first is the system itself has got to be compliant. If you're dealing with the government and you need to be in a, say, FedRAMP high or a really secure GovCloud environment, that should be a baseline. You should definitely go with a system that can be compliant overall. You should use that as a vetting process right at the beginning. So if you have controlled and classified information or subject to ITAR, you need a system that can handle it. You want the system itself can be able to handle it. Second aspect of compliance, you should be able to comply with data retention, contract, and other requirements inside of the process. For example, our system can help you certify that the pricing data you provided is TINA certified. System can also help you identify, for example, which clauses are contained on which contracts. So you actually can be able to validate internally when there are questions and have that happen quickly. And so compliance is multi-threaded here, and you better make sure you can meet all those different aspects. And finally, the vertical specific CLM should help you make better decisions. And so you should be thinking about the information that you don't have today. So you might be managing contracts in a sophisticated system. We've seen lots of them now with these homegrown systems, but almost nobody retains all the information that they want from written contracts or contracts that they've written that can be queried, that can be standardized, that can be aggregated. That information is simply not kept in a way. It's kept in files on SharePoint that can be keyword searched and nothing else, but no analytics can be done. That's the sort of thing that we really think a modern CLM should be able to help you out with. So when you need to make a decision, the data is not there, and you got to send somebody off to go do a manual review of all the data. It's extremely complex, expensive, if not impossible to be done in a timely manner. And so you really want information that you don't have today. I mean, second, that's just presence of the data or not. The second part, though, is the data available to whom. And so you're now able to push information out, permissioned information, not everything to everyone, but push information out about contracts or deliverables or unfunded portions of contracts, whatever the case may be, to people who would need it. So if you have this information visibility, it becomes a lot easier for people, not just at a strategic level to make decisions, but at the tactical level, managing programs and managing contracts. So the data for everyone who would need it. So last part, what should be considered when evaluating the vertical CLM technologies? So we've highlighted 8 key areas that we think you ought to consider when thinking about CLM. And first, I would say, read and write. So companies need to be able to ingest prime contracts and subcontracts automatically, and be able to easily say, for example, write non-disclosure agreements and teaming agreements and subcontract packages. Commercial CLMs put a lot of weight on manual creation and interpretation, say, of bespoke contracts, instead of dealing with the far more rule-based contracts in the federal space. And given the presence of, say, incremental funding, and modifications are a huge, huge problem, for example, in defense contracts. In the commercial world, the complexity of the contracts is in a different area. And so the ability to receive, ingest, understand, and then use that information to then write a subcontract is in a thoughtful way is a key consideration. So I want to take that first because I think that's a core part. But then I do want to pull back to the first one that you saw, which is this integrated business development capture platform. Your organization has this information and wants to be able to tie in. So I think some of our most successful customers have used both our growth platform for our pre-award business development type management, as well as our contracts team management software. What do? It's the entire cradle to grave life cycle of identifying an opportunity, winning it, taking the information that they've gotten at this opportunity stage, pushing it to create a contract record in the system, to make sure nothing is lost, to make sure the business development team then has immediate access to the information the contracts team has, and the contracts team then can go back and pull out the history that they have seen in the business development world. The ability to collaborate seamlessly across that divide with sales and other stakeholders really winds up being very important. And I'll show that to you in a second with organizational conflict of interest, which is the third thing I want to talk about for a key consideration. While we mentioned that in the government space, post-award really is very important, but contracts teams, they're nimble. They go across the entire life cycle, and a lot of their work in either pricing or valuation happens in this pre-award world. Organizational conflict of interest is one of them. And so it's an embedded tool can make it much easier for your company to follow a specific process. And it's the same process that happens when you're making an evaluation, whether it could be a conflict of interest during an opportunity pursuit versus when there is a modification to a contract that would increase its scope. That's the same process, and everyone across the organization now can participate. Your former capture manager, the program manager, the contracts manager, anybody else with insight across the organization can participate. Fourth part for key considerations of an A&D, this deliverable management. Deliverables are a funny thing in this space. It could be that the deliverables that needs to be tracked are the hard deliverables, or they could be the soft deliverables. In fact, a lot of our clients have a really, really hard time tracking the soft deliverables much more. And they want to use our system to be able to manage the CDRLs, the contract data line items, one by one that they need to be able to ensure are being delivered. They have a hard time tracking those requirements and keeping them in scope. And they want to use a system to be able to ingest immediately from the actual documents provided, ensure those are in the system, and then push them across the organization. And that sort of deliverable management, specialized workflow, really is it cuts across the organization and where you'd want to be able to send that information across to procurement and to delivery teams. Fifth part for an A&D organization, that single pane of glass that I talked about earlier, these executive insights, including, we've got all the data across the organization, but here's a good example. When we talked about past performance, we talked about past performance in a broader sense. But in the federal space, the government issues the CPARs or past performance reports. One of our clients could take a CPAR, ingest it into the system, and then have that data inside their system tied to each of their contracts. Now, they can then use the workflow in the narrow sense of having to respond to the government when they make an evaluation. But once all that's done, that information is in the system to be accessed when bidding on the next contract. And so to be able to inform pursuit decisions where you're able to get this past performance, the best actual examples, and then know which other opportunities were used for bidding, which had used those same exact past performances. So that level of visibility is very important. A second example is if you're in business development, you want to know which contracts may have had unexercised obligations, may have had funding that has not happened yet on a contract. You want to look at current periods of performance and at the end of the government's fiscal year say, I really want to know, I got $50 million left on this contract. Can I possibly get another order on here? And you want to really explore as much as possible any existing contract that may not be funded. If your business development team has access to that data, they don't have to make a guesswork about which customers still have availability. That gives them a lot greater leverage. And these are real examples that our actual clients have sent back to us and say, these are things that we have gotten value out of your software. Three more to go. First, as I discussed earlier, highly stringent security mandates. If you have high level security for these NIST, FedRAMP, CMMC, really think about this ahead of time. Don't wait until the last minute. We're able to deliver on less secure and more secure environments. The less secure environments for companies that simply don't have those requirements. Software is the same on each of those. The costs can differ, but what you shouldn't do is not think about it and then change your mind later. Because as soon as you start down this process and then say, oh, actually 6 months from now, a year from now, we're just going to switch over. It's not that easy. You can't. Most systems can't handle it all. And the systems, when you can handle such high level security requirements, you really should think about it and make those decisions early on, get your entire organization that needs to be in those areas. We see some companies have very complex environments where this is a commercial environment, this is a highly protected government environment, and they want information to pass back and forth. That's really difficult. And we want to make sure that there's no miscommunication and no loss of time or effort when somebody wants to come to us and set up one of these systems. Two more. First, user adoption and cost of ownership. So you want it to just be able to turn it on and just have the information you need. We've thought about this quite a bit and what information you need on a contract layout or a CLM layout or elsewhere. We have out-of-the-box layouts that let you just turn something on, but we also can understand when your business process is so complex that you've got 3 layers of business units and they tie back into a delegation of authority matrix and all these different areas. We have experience with all these areas and can build out reasonably quickly if something is not in the product. And so you really want the information to be there right away, because that's how you're going to get the user adoption. So those fields, layouts, reports, all needs to be there. They need to speak your team's language right out of the box, because people are going to be a lot more expensive than the system itself. Part of the reason there's value in going with the electronic systems is that you don't need as many people to manually pour over things. You want their workflows to be easy. You want when they enter into the system, they see every single action that is required of them, every single report that is available to them, and it's all right there at their fingertips. And that's how you're going to wind up reducing the total cost of ownership. And finally, connectivity. We have, again, this business development capture system, and we have this contract system. We have other data systems from the government, but we know that clients come to us with human resources systems, ERPs, other types of supplier management systems that they want us to integrate with. When you're looking at a CLM, you need to have one that can actually handle this and handle this pretty quickly. And think about it smartly too. When you say smart connectivity, you don't want all the data going everywhere all the time. That could be a problem. So you want to really think about what the use case and value of transforming that data and sending it across the organization. All right. With those areas, what I want to share with you is a demonstration of the key aspects of TechnoMile software that could provide additional value to you. So I will share my screen. Okay. First thing you're going to see is a contracts dashboard inside of TechnoMile's version on top of Salesforce. And so what you're seeing are all the different actions as a user of the system, as a contract manager. I have contracts in draft. I have contracts that are awaiting processing. I have agreements that need to be signed. I have visibility into my top contracts and visibility into organizational conflict of interests, non-disclosure agreements, and necessary. These are completely configurable dashboards, but as I mentioned before, out of the box, we have a whole set that makes sense. So what we have is this, we have this ability to pull all this information together. 5 things I want to show you today about workflows that can really enhance your understanding of what CLMs can do in this space. I'm going to show you an organizational conflict of interest routing. I want to show you our ability to ingest a contract using intelligent contract ingestion. I want to show you saving time and effort with limitation of funds, a huge automation capability. And then I want to show flow downs of clauses from a contract to a subcontract, and finally a contract closeout. It's going to be a few minutes each. We only have about 25 minutes left, and then I'll get to some of your questions. So the first thing I want to show you, I'll go here, and I'll go to an opportunity. Why? Because a organizational conflict of interest is an assessment about whether an OCI exists when pursuing an opportunity that you need to maybe write a plan to try to mitigate. This could happen at pre-award, it could happen at a modification. So this is a tie-in to our opportunities, and the same thing would happen on our contract modification. In our system, I would go here to OCIs, and let's just say this is an opportunity that keeps going. There's repeatedly updates in a modification, and you have to keep making another assessment for an organizational conflict of interest. What you're able to do here, basically say, is there a scope change? Yeah, you could answer a series of questions configurable to your specific process. Is it follow-on work? Yeah, there's potential for follow-on work, et cetera, et cetera. No, there's no current mitigation plan. And you can write through, is it ITAR controlled? Yes. Are we going to be a prime or a sub? We're going to be prime. And then I could put the appropriate information about the contracts manager, the capture manager, and click save. So what's going to happen here? It's going to create a record in the system, this organizational conflict of interest record. It has a workflow. The purpose of this workflow is to identify whether or not an OCI exists. You want to send it to people who are going to make that evaluation. Then if it does, be able to collaborate on an OCI mitigation plan and have that on the record to be used for in proposals. So I'm going to add team members here. This could be automated, but in this case, it's a manual process. And I'm going to add Jacob, a colleague, Jacob, and he'll be a reviewer. And for ease of the demonstration, I would actually have more than one reviewer, right? But for ease of demonstration, I will add him as a reviewer, and I will add him as an approver. And I'm going to show you how to walk through this entire process. I'm going to click save. Very good. So now I've got this team member, and what I want to do is be able to send it to this other person for review. I'm going to send it for review and say, please determine if an OCI exists. And that's going to be sent for review, right? Now, what's going to happen is Jacob's going to receive a notification in the system. He's also going to receive a notification via email. And I want to show you the notification he actually gets. I'm gonna share the screen. I'm gonna switch it to Jacob's screen, and here would be Jacob. I'm gonna refresh the email box. Okay, here we go. Let's see. Oh, yeah. A request has been submitted for your review, and he can then review the organizational conflict of interest. He receives it here. He can go to the record and say, oh, actually, I've reviewed this, and no, I don't think there is an OCI. And is there a conflict? No. I'll say no, and I'll click save. Right? That record's been saved. Now, he's done his work. Jacob has done his work. Now that that record's been saved, if I were to refresh the screen, you'll see that Jacob will see the comment there in the adjudication. We'll make sure. I'll just make sure that I did that right. No OCI. I will save. Yeah, there we go. I did not click submit. So there I go. No, I click submit. Now I'll go back to the contract manager. Right? The contract manager is going to go, okay. Contract manager comes here. Contract manager looks at this OCI record. Will have received an email. So the contract manager sees, oh, no, there's no OCI. And then the contract manager will also, I believe, OCR review gets completed, gets a notification, and also gets an email that this is done, and then can send it for approval. And what we mean by approval in this case can depend on your individual business context. And it could say something like, Jacob said no OCI. Can you confirm? If there was a existing OCI mitigation plan that could be attached in this workflow, and I could submit for approval. And the same thing would happen. I'm going to do it off screen really quickly, and you will see that. I'll share my screen so I don't lose track of where I am. There we go. Okay, so here, approve or reject. Say, no, there is no OCI. And so I've confirmed that there's no OCI. I could have done rejected, depends on the business workflow here. And so that's done. That's moved to the approved status, and it's ready to go. And everybody's comments, who be a reviewer or approver, have been documented into the system. That way, your business can actually track the workflow as they've moved through this organizational conflict of interest. And the contract manager would actually see this on the record with this OCI and say, okay, no, there's no conflict, and no, there's no conflict, and then be able to change the details here to say, no, there's going to be no mitigation strategy, and then come to a conclusion about whether this needs to be shared. So first thing, simple, compiled, streamlined workflow for organizational conflict of interest. All right. The next thing I want to show you is how to save time and effort, not pre-award, but at contract award. We have this ability to pull in a contract at award. And here it says, I go to a contract, so it says ingest contract. And so government contracts have these very specific forms. We've built out a technology that can ingest those specific forms. In a few months, we're actually going to have a technology that can ingest any form, prime contractor or subcontractor. But for today's demonstration, I will ingest an SF33, which is a form that could be used for solicitation as well as award. Here, I'm going to pull this thing in. And let's say I wanted to create this fusion-powered space laser. It's a contract. It's a meaty contract. It's a several hundred-page document with a large set of data up front, with clauses, with line items of funding, plans, and slims. So I submitted this for processing. Our workflow is that an email is sent to the contract manager, the head contract manager in the system, and then it will actually show up on a dashboard as available for processing. Inside of here, you can actually have a whole dashboard set ready to go. I will show you the email that gets generated here. So let me pull this out. I can close this one out. Don't need that one. I will show you the email that gets sent. Okay, so it says a contract has been submitted. There it is. And when it's done, it'll be processed. I can click the link. To save time in today's demo, I've submitted this well ahead of time. And so if I go down here, that there was one that had been submitted right before this demo, and I click link, it takes just a few minutes for this to work. As you see, it was previously submitted. It took about 4 minutes to process this nearly couple hundred-page document. So I'm going to click this link, and it starts the ingestion of this contract in the following way. It will take information from this contract. It will put information right here, and you can pull in all the top-level form data. So I'm going to put this as, say, webinar is the contract vehicle name, and it pulls in all this relevant information. When I click next, it's going to infer the periods of performance on this contract. I'm going to make them very simple, but periods of performance being a very difficult thing to read, our first version of the software infers them from the line items that are on the software. So I'm going to just make it very simple. And if I missed one, I could add one here and click Save. What's going on here, the next screen, are all the line items in the contract. That's a CLN or SLIN, the contract line item or the sub line item number. And it will pull in all of that information, every CLN, tie it to whatever period it's in, the pieces, the relevant text that goes along with it, the type of the CLN, quantity, unit price, and amounts, appropriate amounts. It will also pull in the relevant funding of the line items if not everything is funded or actually exercised at that time. So it's pulling in all this information. The amount of time that gets saved, should somebody want to have this information in the system from ingesting this, manually hand keying it, is tremendous. So for companies that really insist on being able to track at this level, this is a huge time savings. Our accuracy is reasonably good on these things, but remember, a contracts manager's job is to know what's in the contract. This just accelerates their ability to see the information. I'm going to click Confirm and Ingest. And what you're going to see then next are the clauses. These are all the clauses that are in the contract, and we have broken these things out. We have a library that we provide. It's one of those things that I didn't mention earlier. Government contracts are written, provided to defense contractors. They contain clauses by reference or clauses by full text from the FAR, from the DFAR, some agencies. We pull those clauses from acquisition.gov, and we pull the flow downs for FAR and DFAR from the Defense Acquisition University Clause Matrix, and we give them to our clients once a month. We provide them and send them to our clients when they're updated, so they have a robust, accurate list of all the contract clauses that could show up in their standard clauses that could show up. And this system will either try to match them, what's in the document, with what's in the library. And that's what that match score is you see on the right. And so the idea is that you can actually compare which version it might match up against. This one is the June 2020 version, and it matches up against this one rather than the November 2021 version. So you know which clause is actually on which contract. I'm going to accept the one that's in the library, but maybe one is actually from the document. It happens to be a little bit different. So I can identify those clauses by reference, where they just use the number, or by full text, and it tries to match them also by the full text of the clause itself. If I click the next, it's where it pulled out clauses. The system pulled out clauses from the contract, but it says I can't match them against anything in the library. It will still pull those in. And then you can review those and change those. And then there are additional clauses in other sections that are also that can be pulled in. And I'm going to click Confirm and Ingest. And what I want to show you here is the information that got pulled in. What got pulled in is all the information you saw, and that's going to try to process it all and put it right on top of this contract record. Now we have a standard contract workflow right out of the box that could tie into your approval processes, that can get tied into lots of other things. And so We're not going to be able to cover all that. If you're interested, I'm happy to show you, or our team's happy to show you in a full demo. But rest assured, the clauses that we just identified are here and listed on each of the contracts with an appropriate clause subcontracts flow down where necessary. And we'll show that in a second when I create a subcontract on here. What you see are the periods of performance that I ingested and the money in that contract that is just now rolling up in terms of obligations and funding. And for each of the CLMs, it's processing in the background. There were a couple of hundred CLMs on this, and it's pulling them all in line by line, deciding what's exercised and what's not, rolling up that money from the line items to the periods of performance to the contract overall. If I were to go down, I'd have information from the contract overall. All the information from the intelligent ingestion is here and is ready to go. So that's what I wanted to show you, is that ability to ingest that information rapidly at contract award has a tremendous time savings. Look for a system that can really do that. Third thing I want to show you, I've got set up on a different contract record, so give me 1 second. Find one that would be very helpful here. Let's go down to order 2. Okay, let's do it right here. So I set up a contract in this system. I want to show you limitation of funds. What's limitation of funds? You get a contract. It's a cost type contract. The government has funded only a certain amount of it and said, okay, when the amount that you've invoiced in this contract is going to exceed a certain threshold 60 days from now, 90 days from now, let us know today so we can provide you more funding. That's an organizational challenge that everyone faces in this space with that. We built a tool that lets you manage this easily, reminds you when this is going to happen, lets you generate the letter and send it off. I'm going to show this very briefly. So here I have a task order on this larger contract. This task order has a single period of performance, and it's got $1 billion and 750 million in funding. And I'm going to set this up in this limitation of funds module. So what's happening at the contract level or at the CLM level? What am I doing? Well, I need to assign somebody who's going to be in charge of this. Let's put this person in charge of it. Limitation of funds, I don't have to match that. And let's say in the law, in the contract, it says 60 days from now, 75%. So you need to notify the government when the funding is going to, the invoiced amount is going to be exceeding 75%, so they can consider giving you more funding. We have 2 ways of doing this. When we talked about integrations earlier, we can integrate with an ERP, providing the financials back, which would automatically tell you how much you've invoiced. But instead of that, let's say you don't have that, and you can actually just put in that the amount that you are invoicing every single month. So here I'm going to put in 70 million. Remember, this is a big contract. And so you say on average, you're invoicing 70 million. This does all the math. It tells you where you are today. It says, based on where you are today and when this contract started, it says in 60 days, your estimated future percentage is 67%. So you don't need to tell the government yet. You don't need to. Only when you've burned a certain amount, right? It says it's below the threshold and it hits a certain amount, say, I think it's 80. Great. Now this is 76%. It exceeds the threshold. The system tells you you better send a notification because you need to tell them that you need more money. If you happen to be here, you can actually remind the contract manager, send a notification to the contract manager that they need to do it. And then it will send an email saying, hey, you need to send this notification. You can also generate the limitation of funds letter in our technology. It will automatically generate this information, create a letter that can be used as a template and you can bring your own template to be sent to the government contracting officer. That's the sort of automation we're talking about. The amount of time and effort it would take to manually do this is substantial, but this system automates that. What does that letter look like? Well, I've got this template right here. Go. It says the demo company provides notice, blah, blah, blah. Here's how much has been obligated. Here's how much has been funded. The current percent is 10%, but we expect to be above on this contract on a certain date. Again, that's the sort of automation that we think is very, very valuable. The email that goes along with this contains the same sort of information. In fact, a little bit more, but this document itself is configurable. All right. To run through just a couple more points. Let me look at, I can do it on this contract actually. So I'll start from here. We'll go to our contracts. And I had actually as an aside, I have a IDIQ contract. I've got 2 task orders in this contract. While I'm here, let me show you, we have the ability to roll up all the money from those task order contracts right through to their parent contracts. And if it's a 3rd level, right up through to that for ease of tracking of the information. So what you're going to see here is this contract doesn't have any money on it itself. It's an IDIQ. All the money is in the task orders underneath. And we have the ability to track all of that and be able to report on all of that for a far more accurate view of the data. That's when you want the system out of the box to report such things. So it had 2 separate orders underneath it. So I can find where they were. And yeah, I will go back to this system right here to order number 2. And what I want to show you is the flow down. So let's say you've got this task order, and you have a set of partners you're working with. We have the ability to track all your subcontracts, actually create a subcontract agreement on top of that containing the information. Not enough time to show that today, but what I want to show you is the flow down of the clauses to save time and effort. Here, there are a bunch of clauses that were on this task order. How these clauses get here? They flowed from the contract automatically. We don't just have we don't have clause flow downs to the subcontract. We have them to the task orders underneath. And from here, I got clause flows to both subcontracts as well as task orders. So if I'm going to create a subcontract on this record, the clauses will flow directly to it. Again, those clauses come from acquisition.gov, and the requirements of flow down would come from the Defense Acquisition University. But if I create a subcontract record here, we'll make this a definitive subcontract. It can create IDIQs, orders, etc. And the name, let's say that our subcontractor was in this space laser is going to be SpaceX. Here we go. And we'll just make up some numbers here. The status is draft. Let's see, Elon could be our contact there, and other information as required. The fields that are out of the box here really are in the aerospace and defense world. And let's say the execution date were today, and I save as draft. So it's going to create a subcontract record that pulls the information in from the contract. And the first thing I want to show you is its ability to pull in clauses. So if I were to go here and go to the clauses section, I created a blank clause record. However, the clauses that were labeled as flow down to subcontract will automatically show on this record. So now you will have the ability to track which clauses you've accurately flown down to your subcontractors without really having to do anything, but make sure your library is current and make sure your contract is current. So anytime you create a record in that system, it should very accurately portray that information. One final thing I want to show you from a workflow enhancement standpoint is contract closeout. So let me get to a contract that is ready to be closed out rather than have to go through this whole system. Let's say it's going to be, I'll do the whole IDIQ here. This is in the administer stage. There's a whole workflow process that's embedded, being able to get an approval, being able to data review, and then there's a whole closeout process. How does that closeout process work? Well, we've automated the sending of tasks and notifications. Clients came to us and said, we have tons of contracts. There's no process involved to be able to close them out. And you have that in the system. We do. And so how that works in our system today is that you would click close out. This works for contracts and subcontracts. You would say, okay, it probably at this point would actually be in this contract ended bucket. We hadn't put in that date yet. It would be in the contract ended. It would notify the contract manager. This is probably ready to initiate a closeout. this closeout has a whole set of information that's default out of the box and a whole set of tasks that are assigned out of the box that can be changed. So if I were to click new, and let's say I'm going to anticipate closing out, let's be generous, just in a few weeks. There's a warranty provision end date at the same date, not started. And I click save. So now it's saying, okay, I just started to think about the closeout that needs to happen. Let me set aside, make sure I got the tasks assigned, who needs to do what. We have a standard template, then I'm going to upload those tasks. Here they are. What are those tasks? Disposal of classified material, royalties, engineering letter, standardized tasks that we have seen in the marketplace that we have now put in there. Each of these tasks can be assigned to a user, and they will then get an email making sure they get assigned. And you can keep reminding them too that these things need to get done. So I'm going to send that email, I'm going to confirm, and the user can then say, okay, I've got this thing set up. I want to initiate the closeout. Save. Great. Now email was sent to the internal stakeholders. We're ready to start closing out. And a whole set of processes we get. The email that person would send them back here and say, have you performed this task? They can come in, edit the details of this task as necessary, but can also just come in and say, yeah, this one's done. And then this one's just under review. This one's not applicable, et cetera, et cetera. And the contract record itself cannot be closed out until the people performing the task have actually done it. If you try to finalize closeout, it's going to say you can't do it. Remind the people that they need to go do it. Another email will be sent out to them. And so not until everything is actually closed, is either complete or not applicable, would it be possible to close out the contract. Again, this is designed maybe not as a huge time savings, but as a compliance effort. Really is necessary to make sure everything has been done. An integration that we have here could be with SharePoint, where a lot of those documents would need to be stored. In fact, we would recommend that as a sort of preferred way to do this. And I'm going to click Finalize Closeout and save. Great. So now this contract is, if I refresh, in a inactive, closed out state. All the information is ready to go. Now you have a complete record laid out with all the relevant information across the board. Again, what I wanted to show you is not all the details of this, but specific areas and specific workflows that we think would be important to you if you were to try to go with the solution. So thank you for letting me share that. I'm going to then go into the chat and try to answer a bunch of questions. See if there's anything in the Q&A or in the chat.
Hey, Kevin.
Yeah.
I had a few people message me direct, so if you want, I can ask those questions.
Yeah, let's do that.
If I meant to ask them direct, I might have hit just click to moderator, but I'm happy to ask them if you're comfortable answering them.
Sure.
Okay. You showed a lot about federal contracts. We also have a commercial business segment. Can we manage those contracts here too? That's a great question.
It's an excellent question. Yes, you can. We have an agreement management capability that lets users create contract records, subcontract records from templates themselves. So if they've entered the information, they can manage the contracts that way. Often, commercial comes in two senses. One sense is my commercial is I'm a subcontract to a prime versus I'm out in the open marketplace writing contracts. Yes, we can handle both situations, but often we're going to take the lowest, simplest approach to that.
Perfect. Here is another one they sent to just the host. So folks, if you have questions, you can also send them to everybody, or it's up to you how you want to send them. But this is, does the system have a retention period field that follows contracts closeout?
It doesn't by default. So I think what people are saying is it going to delete stuff eventually?
Yeah.
No, by default, we don't have that. The system itself can be configured to do those things. That's not been best practice for our clients to go in and wipe things later, especially in our defense clients, that they would actually have to wait a very long time before that would be applicable. And we also don't advise it from a business development standpoint. You really want to think which data you'd want to keep and that is truly valuable in the long run. So we'd have to think through what you'd really want to keep.
Yeah, that's a big one. Well, we're running out of time. We're out of time. So I did have a few more questions, folks. Connect with Kevin. Kevin, did you put your email in here? If
Now,
not,
yeah, so you see me on LinkedIn. I'm kevin.brancato@technomile.com.
perfect. And we do appreciate your time, Kevin. Your visuals are great. So I'm a visual learner, like I'm sure many people were. So I appreciate you screen sharing. That helps me a lot. And I just appreciate TechnoMile for being the sponsor for today. Folks, you will get some follow-up information, so keep an eye on your emails. And Kevin, any closing remarks?
No, it's really great to be able to show this to people. I really enjoy working with people, making their workflows a lot better day to day. Again, any questions, feel free to reach out.
Perfect. Thanks, everyone. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.